Hello everybody, how's it going? Welcome aboard the Bonny Rackham. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 10 rundown. We got a lot to go through. So yeah, without further ado, no long intro for this one. Let's get straight into it.
Get us underway.
Okay, so our first point of call, as always, is a title. And yes, so this one is a pretty easy one because I sort of mentioned it last episode. It was the song used to see out the last episode, episode 9, and it was called Avalanche by Nick Cave. And when I was talking about it, I was like, oh, I should have called this episode, I called it TikTok. But yeah, Avalanche, it is too good of a sort of title of symbolism and all that sort of stuff for what's going on here. Just an avalanche into absolute chaos and just a whole new kind of chapter of the show. So yeah, without further ado, let's get a quick summary sorted just to remind you what goes on in this episode, get a rating sorted, and then we can get into the character discussions.
First item.
So this one was written by Jonathan Steinberg and Robert Levine, back at it again. And it's directed by Steve Boyum, who is directing, for the third time this season. So yeah, he got a lot of work. So yeah, a show-stopping season finale. This might be my favourite episode of the whole show. It's, at least joint up there with the next two kind of season finales to come. Flint is facing a quick and very unfair public trial. Miranda's dead body is paraded in front of him and only serves to stir a monster that wants her word to be the last word for Charlestown. When Vane turns up, a rivalry becomes a unity. Meanwhile, Vane's crew haven't got the memo on this unity, and the Walrus crew are fighting to survive. John Silver is brave under pressure, and we see both what he means to the crew and the crew now mean to him. His bravery comes at a cost though that will change him forever. Anne and Jack have a heart-to-heart and return to Nassau with the Urca treasure in tow. Once on the loose, Flint and Vane wreck Charlestown and destroy it to rubble. It's an amazing episode, and it's my first perfect 10 out of 10 score. So yes, before we get into character discussions, as always with halfway season points and season finales, let's check in on how my top 10 episodes and just in general how the episodes are kind of looking in the rankings, in my personal rankings at this stage. So we have our 5 just outside the top 10. Just a chance for you to have a quick look at them. And then into the top 10 as it stands at the end of season 2. Yeah, Avalanche, right there, straight in at number 1. TikTok from the last episode, straight in at number 2. As expected, it's all pretty much absolutely dominated by season 2. It's only Shifting Sands right from that last episode of season 1 that makes it into the top 10. Obviously, it's going to be all changed come this time again at the end of season 3, I imagine. So yeah, some really great episodes come through this season for sure. So yeah, let's get into those character discussions now and really kind of deep dive and get into what our characters were doing in this episode.
Next item.
Okay, so let's start with Max on Nassau, and then we'll move on to Anne and Jack's great scene on the Colonial Dawn with a quick kind of Gen X reunion at the episode's end, before we move on to everything going on in Charlestown. So Adele has informed Max of Eleanor's arrest and that she's gone. A lot of emotion with Max. As always, it's really hard to read exactly what's going on in her head. I've sort of got my kind of reading on what I think going on, so yeah, see what you think. Firstly, though, before we get into that, Max's dress, can we take a moment? Yeah, I think this little yellow number, it might be one of my favourites, but then I said that on a little blue number at the end of last season, which was a great dress. It's a nice colour, anyway. So yeah, she's wondering if they will try Eleanor for piracy. She's concerned, it would seem, for Eleanor on first reading. But this is Max. I love her, but she'd be worrying about herself more than anything, I think, at most times. So yeah, when she's asking Adele if she thinks Eleanor will be tried in the same way as a man, I think Max, she's more or less a pirate, at least in trade and side hustles now. So she's weary, I think, of the dangers on herself that she could face. So Adele says she knows this must be hard for her, thinking her concern and emotion is kind of in regards to Eleanor being arrested. but Max says less than you would think. You know, that was my first reading of it. And then obviously when she said that, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, hers and Eleanor's relationship is complicated. But yeah, of course, after recent events last episode, Eleanor trying to kill her crew, you know, she maybe wouldn't have just that same level of concern for Eleanor's welfare anymore, I don't think. And it is kind of her worrying for herself. I don't know, maybe she's worrying a little bit about Anne and Jack, you know, Anne particularly as well, and how they get on and that sort of thing. So yeah, Max asks Adele how much money could she have if needed. And yeah, she's ready to level up again. So yeah, a little bit later, staring at a hung-up Eleanor dummy the townsfolk are kind of made in the middle of the square, just to kind of reinforce that fear on her. Yeah, she has a real good look at it, you know, and it's getting to her, we can see. But Max enters the tavern. It's just the tavern now. We're not calling it Eleanor's Tavern for the moment. But to talk to Captain Fraser. She's heard the consortium is no more. Everyone's pretty much parted, bolted, you know, going to do their own things. And he says he's heard to be expecting a visit from her. We saw a tiny little scene with a couple of the captains and Mrs. Mapleton. So I imagine it was probably her, Mrs. Mapleton. She's got a gob on her. Max has an envelope and a proposition. He's reluctant, you know, he knows the Urca treasure is kind of imminent now, I think, and he knows her part in it all. But Max is really smart here. She's sort of separating herself from the crew and from all that, and she's using language to distance herself from the pirates and to sort of talk to this guy as an equal, as if she's kind of on their side. You know, she's being quite Eleanor-like a little bit here. She basically says she won't make the same mistakes that Eleanor did. Give it 4 or so episodes, girl. Give it 4 or so episodes. She'll learn pretty quickly that it's not as easy as it looks, mixing, you know, both business and personal, and trying to keep everybody on this island happy while juggling kind of both sides. But one great line she has is when she says power in this place is most effective when least perceived. You know, great line. Yeah, it could be a little bit of a Max motto that. You know, we've seen her power slowly rise all season, but she's subtle, she's quiet, she's smart with it for the most part. But yeah, definitely some interesting and sort of tough moral kind of times for Max to come in next season. So she hands in the envelope with her offer and wants a response by nightfall. Fraser asks her, you know, why is this so important to her, this place? Max doesn't answer. So yeah, what could it be? Power, money, you know, could be both of them. A safety net to prove she's not a pirate if authorities come knocking. That's all kind of up for interpretation now. I think it's a little bit of all sort of 3 of them. Again, yeah, because she doesn't give much away at all, and even when she does, Max is a character that you can't always trust it. You don't always know she's giving you the truth. I do think that once Max has made her mistakes and been through a hard time, she doesn't like to end up going backwards. Yeah, meaning when conflict between business or personal, like we're going to see next season come up, she'll make some interesting choices first time around. But yeah, you know I love Max. I love how smart she is. Frustrating as she can be, I do love the mystery of her. She keeps everything close to her chest. But yeah, it's been a strong season for her. I've sort of liked her rise. Though she didn't pick up any MVPs this season, unfortunately, she has been a bit overshadowed there. But yeah, a great season for Max overall. Right, we need a drink from the Anne Cup. So yeah, one of my favourite Black Cell scenes, full stop, coming up. So yeah, forgive me if I linger a bit. Definitely my favourite Jack and Anne scene out of the whole show. So Featherstone, Jack and Anne, they're sailing to the Urca. And Featherstone starts the Spaniard named Vasquez story to the crew, you know, to get them hyped. And it's good to hear that, you know, love that tale is just still travelling and being used to inspire crews. And so Jack sees Anne is distracted a little away on the ship, so they go and finish their chat before they were so rudely interrupted last episode and Anne had to save the day. So Jack, he jumps straight in with but and asks her what else she was going to say. And Anne sort of continues and says she realised in Port Royal that was the furthest they had been separated since they were kids. Says the distance has helped her to see things more clearly, what they are and what they're not. Jack is listening, he's taking it in. Maybe he's been expecting something like this for a while, I think. But it's not any easier on him. And, she's being reflective again. I spoke, a lot about all that going on last episode. Just, such a level up, an amazing character development for her. Just really great character development this show, and Anne's and Flint's this season is probably why it's maybe my favourite season. She knows who she is, and understanding finally her dynamics with Jack and Max in this moment. So it's gorgeous lighting as she's talking, the sunlight keeps trying to kind of burst through. Anne says she owes him her life from saving her from something awful. Maybe there's some part of that you just can't owe, she says. At this point she must have saved him a few times. Him and Featherstone would likely be dead if she hadn't have been there last episode. Her and Max, are sort of all square now on lives owed as well, in a way. So I don't think she's talking literally when she says some part of that you can't owe, eye for an eye sort of thing anymore. But I think she's finally understood at some point you sort of have to be your own person and get on with your own life. You can't let IOUs hang over you. Still, not quite understanding where she's going with this, what she's getting at. Jack says, but you can owe it to Max. And Anne simply says, I don't feel that way with her. As to exactly what she means by that, it's hard to say. She doesn't elaborate. This is Anne. I think she's just saying, it's not as deep with her, with Max. It doesn't go so far back. Not so many strings, sort of so many chords attached as they have. It's just simply not as complicated as their relationship as hers and Jack's. Max is a part of her life and an important one now. But I think with her and Jack, it's just something so different. It's, it's beyond love. It's just a bond that you can't break and you can't part, as she'll sort of say. She continues saying every time she tried to get info in Port Royal, they knew her name, but immediately they said Jack's name, like they're two halves of the same thing. Then she just says it straight to him. I can't be your wife, Jack. But you and I are going to be partners till they put us in the fucking ground. As long as you feel the same. Even just saying it always freaking gets me. In a way, this is a bit of a breakup scene, I think. Not complete in the traditional sense. But it's Anne saying we're not going to be quite what we was. Because we never really were that. But we do belong together. We're ride or die. You still in? That's sort of what she's saying. And it's not too far off a sort of coming out scene as well. Actually, it's got similar vibes to that as well for me. And a little bit kind of maybe what's going down. But we just see Jack with a single tear going down his cheek. Always gets to me. I think maybe deep down he knew something like this was coming. With all the Max stuff and everything, and has known her love isn't quite a wife's girlfriend love. I mean, they've always had a different, because they're pirates and the life they lead. But he's going to struggle with this a little bit early next season. But for now, it's enough for him, and he's still in, and he just puts his arm around her, and they just look out to sea, and this is literally like the perfect scene, and why Jack and Anne are one of my favourite ships in any show ever. Like, it's not simple, it's not lovey-dovey romantic, it's just two people that just need each other, that belong together, and that you just can't fuck with. This is my favourite scene of the episode, but the Flint and Vane sequence is something else entirely. So I could sort of give this best scene, but I don't know. It's tough. This is too good an episode. And so we end the Janex part of the episode with their triumphant return to Nassau and their reunion. And they now have the gold, which Jack teases a bit. He says there were still healthy soldiers on the beach. They're looking a little bit beaten up and that they put up a fight. I would have loved to have seen some of this battle. The budget obviously all went on Charlestown and Flint and Vane. But I think of all the few things throughout the show that we don't see, this is what I would have loved the most. You know, I mean, it would have just been Anne kicking ass, let's face it. That would have been great to see a little bit of, but I understand why, and I'm glad in the long run that they kind of just went with all the action on Charlestown. And we see they have returned with the Walrus. The Walrus is back in Nassau, and Max asks why would they need a second ship when she spots it. And Jack says, we needed the hold space. Would you like to see something shiny? And yeah, a great final shot. You know, this is the last shot of the episode of Max just grinning, you know, staring at all the boxes of gold. Just great lighting on her face. You know, she's kind of lit like gold. Yeah, brilliant and framing and sort of lighting this episode as well, by the way. Just a great little scene to end on them, and a great kind of finish for them three. As you know, one of my favourite dynamics. But yeah, let's get on to Charlestown. We're going to chop and change a little bit with characters. We do a Silver and Billy with a bit of Vane. He's going to chop about a bit though, as will Silver. Have a little scene we'll talk about with Flint. Billy and Silver are chained on deck with all the Walrus crew kind of observing Vane's crew, who are really hostile. They're just staring at them, you know. There's kind of some of Vane's crew are kind of listening, obeying orders, and we're going to see there's a big section, including the quartermaster, who wants none of it. So Vane comes to speak to Billy. You know, a bit of a respect has been built there between these guys off the back of last episode, I think. Though the trust is not quite there for them both. Vane knows that they, meaning Billy and everyone, could take the ship back if he lets them go. And, you know, he points out that they share an interest in seeing Flint rescued. But the ship does belong to him now. So, you know, you got to respect that, he's saying. Vane, yeah, just basically asking Billy, don't make trouble with the Walrus crew, just wait it out for us. And yeah, this sense of brotherhood, you know, is being laid down. But Billy points out Vane's men might not be so keen, and yeah, he's right. And yeah, like I say, that pesky quartermaster that's just been in Vane's ear all season, yeah, he isn't planning on obeying his captain. So yeah, Billy would be right on that. But yeah, before Vane leaves, Billy helps him out. I think he's decided, yeah, he's on the level and he is going to try and help us, and he's going to try and help Flint. So yeah, he tells him, just rocking up there with no plan, it won't work. It might be something he can give him to help make it work. So yeah, Billy informs Silver, while they're still sort of chained up, that he's got a few votes for quartermaster. The crew are impressed with him after cutting the sails to delay, you know, Vane's leaving last episode. And Silver's a bit surprised by this, I think. It's a great John Silver episode, really strong. I'm going to see him fully, like, become a pirate now, you know, fully. Right from early, you know, in the season, I don't want to be a pirate. He's a pirate now. And yeah, Vane's gone at this point, and his quartermaster and some of his crew come over, and they go to take Silver. And yeah, great moment where sort of everyone stands to defend him, you know, all the crew. Again, Silver, I think, a little bit stunned by this, you know, from the crew. And I think it will play a part in his decision not to take the deal with Vincent. And I love it when Billy says, that's our brother you've got there. And he, you know, he gives one of the crew a headbutt, and there's a bit of a scuffle, and it's looking like they might win the day. But they're all chained, and unfortunately they're outmatched at this point. But we'll learn something's gone down. So yeah, Silver is taken to the captain's cabin. So yeah, Vane's quartermaster is sat with Vincent, who's silver-tongued him on John's ability to be able to get them out of a tough situation. He didn't get the memo, you know, from last episode though, and he still thinks that Silver will turn tail with him and leave the crew. And yeah, Vincent is acting and behaving and doing exactly what we would have expected Silver to do last season, early this season. You know, he's behaving, making moves that we'd expect Silver to take. But yeah, this slow Silver development that we've been doing kind of bit by bit, and you know, and ties to this crew, it will really start to show here in these scenes. So yeah, the quartermaster, he wants names of 10 men most likely to join his crew to help them get away. You know, more list, calling back to Dufresne's loyalty test a couple of episodes previous, another test, you know, on the Walrus crew's loyalty. But, you know, this Silver now, who's bonded with his crew, he can't bring himself to make a deal like that anymore, and he flat out refuses. He won't, and, you know, maybe most importantly, morally can't at this point. And so Vincent is just shot in cold blood right in front of him. R.I.P. And the quartermaster makes it clear he will have those names. And Silver is held down, and a large mallet, I guess you want to call it, is whacked down on his kneecap. Still, he doesn't say anything. Remember back in season 1, I have a very low tolerance for pain. I'll almost say anything to make it stop. Shock horror, he was lying. So while the chaos is going on in Charlestown, we'll get to it, the quartermaster wants to make a hasty retreat. You know, there's ships fighting, all sorts going on now, and Silver is barely conscious after receiving a few blows on the kneecap at this point, but he's still Silver, and he makes a note of where one of the guy's keys are. You know, he's not had them since he took him away from my men, he says. Yeah, I love the way he says my. One for all for one now for Silver. This sense of unity and brotherhood in this episode is some of the show's just most goosebump-inducing, you know, moments for me. Yeah, the door opens and a couple of bombs are chucked in, and yeah, great rescue mission. You know, it's all go. Billy comes in from the window from the other side, and he gets rid of that dickhead quartermaster finally, once and for all, and Billy's the one that orders the ship to attack on the Charlestown ships. As with Anne last episode, we don't get a lot of Billy, but it's his actions in what we do get that will earn him an MVP nomination. I love slightly timid season 1 Billy, but after what he went through, after going in the water, I do love this more reassured, confident, and for now, really loyal Billy we've seen since his return. Holding on to the Billy love for as long as I can, because I really don't care for him in season 4. The crew, you know, now back in control of the ship, are now pretty much all with Silver, who's just in agony on a makeshift kind of operating table. And the ship's doctor, Dr. Howell, says they'll do what they can, but, you know, he's not very hopeful. Whatever medical procedure they're about to do, pretty much sawing off his leg, it's gonna hurt. And he's got a little bit of rum to help him out. That's it. That's their medical kind of procedure. But of course, if you know your Treasure Island before this point, we've been knowing this will come at some point in the show. And yeah, what a great way to do it, you know, amongst this big battle. And Silver, you know, finally standing up for his crew, the irony. And around the halfway point of the show's whole run as well. Yeah, Dr. Howell says to him there's no other way, and there's some protest from Silver. But yeah, as the bombs are kind of going off on deck, we cut between that and the silent kind of agonising screams of John Silver losing his leg. And we'll jump back to the final Flint and Silver scene last. Okay, so I don't want to deepen Peter Ash too much because cowardly, hypocritical weasel is the general gist. But I do love the little Abigail scene at the beginning of the episode we get. So yeah, Abigail is being sent away to Savannah. So thankfully we know she at least survives, you know, all this attack. One good thing I'll say for Ash is he clearly does care and he loves her deeply. But she's not about to leave quietly. She's not impressed. She says, is it for my welfare you want me to leave or your own? She's got it made. She's got his bullshit made. She's been on the other side of it all for a while now. Knows it's not all as black and white as it's always been made out to be to her by him and by everyone. And she's a really smart woman, and she knows exactly what's happening here. I love that she calls Flint Mr. McGraw. She's really sticking up for him and saying, you know, the only person guilty of a crime is still in Ash's employment. It's the last scene with her, but she's calling him out on all his crap. Knows it's all very bad form on his part and just all a big cover-up, which in terms of the trial, you know, is true. And as we'll find out in a little bit, it's a rigged jury anyway, so Flint was never going to get any justice here. It's all a show, a circus led by this judge, who's just the ringleader that we'll see again. He's in Ash's pocket. And yeah, when her diary is brought by Vane later, you know, as concrete evidence, Ash is still trying to cover it up. Almost like he's convinced himself. I think Abigail was a great little character, maybe the purest on the whole show. Good to see someone from the side of civilization has seen things and she's made up her own mind and she isn't being swayed. It's a shame we don't see her again, but I hope she had a good life. She was like Thomas in some ways, higher on the class level, but understanding and sympathetic to what's going on, you know, and the unfairness and corruption around her kind of in her own. class system. Okay, yeah, so let's get into Flint and Vane. So yeah, I've chopped around with Vane a bit. Small bit I wanted to bring up before we get into Flint and him. He's arguing with his quartermaster. This is before he's kind of gone on the ship, to try and see things his way. And I love it when he says, no one surrenders to a dying thing. And that's exactly what we'll be if we don't act. Vane is talking and acting a lot like Flint in this episode. In the way he talks, in the way he sort of talks about the crew. Yeah, he might not like him still at this point, but he knows how important Flint is in terms of the us versus them kind of long game. But yeah, we'll come back to Vane in a little bit again. So yeah, in Charlestown, and Flint is on trial in the middle of the square. Booze all around him, people staring, very public, just like theatre. I've spoken a little bit about the kind of pirate theatre and the show they do, Dancing the Dance, as I sort of call it, as Flint said last season. But this is civilization theatre. Hate it. Hate it. Still very real. Hate it. Ash speaks to him one-on-one, has the nerve to say not what he wanted. Vice Admiral Lord Kensington is holding proceedings. He's judge, basically. But again, it's not fair, which we sort of see at various points. Ash basically says this guy will turn it into even more of a bigger circus than it already is, so asks Flint to sign a confession for the crimes he's already admitted to him anyway, so that he can stop it. Says he'd carry out the sentence quietly and privately. It's the fact that Peter Ash actually thinks he's being fair and dignified here. I generally think he's just not seeing the shame, the hypocrisy, the coward's act of it all. Flint's going to call him kind of out on it all in a minute. Yeah, he's not understanding why Flint and Miranda were so angry with him when they discovered, what went on. And yeah, and speaking of, they bring Miranda's coffin out, and Ash makes the mistake of saying, this isn't what she would want. And Flint says, I think something really stirs within him on seeing her brought out, that she was clear on what she wanted. She wanted the truth to be known. And he asks him, what was the truth? So small as a bribe? Or was he simply too weak to say no, too cowardly? Flint says if it was just a bribe, he could almost forgive him for that. I love that chained up in front of this mob, seemingly no hope at all, knowing he's about to die, it's Flint in control here. Flint in control of the situation. And yeah, this is now fully Flint behind the wheel. I think part of him maybe wanted to hear any logical reason, as to why all of this with Peter Ash. But I think he's realised out here with this mob, it was never going to go the way he and Miranda had hoped. I think he realises that here in this moment. It was always destined to fail. So when he's talking about, forgiveness, it always reminds me of this ends when I grant them my forgiveness, not the other way round. He is sticking with that. Ash, though, he has no answer. The crowd are being riled up, and Miranda's coffin is opened. And yeah, we see Flint, we see his twitches start. We know when Flint twitches. Yeah, shit's happening, shit's going on in here. Miranda's coffin's opened, and people are just gross. Yeah, mob mentality is mad. Imagine throwing, rotten vegetables and shit and whatever at a dead, at a woman's corpse, only after hearing one side of a story, after having really no idea what's happened because you weren't there. Imagine doing that anyway, even if you did know. Everyone can just do that now behind a computer screen without, anyone knowing who you are in modern times. But, we still be throwing fruit sometimes when we don't have the whole story. Let's just say that. That's the piping hot tea, but that's water. Yeah, I won't deepen that any further because that's all a bit too real. But I feel Flint's rage here. Yeah, I feel Flint's rage here, it's safe to say. As I say, McGraw has retired to the interior now, I think, and Flint is running the show. So this farce of a trial continues. As said, this guy's making a meal of it as promised. He asks Flint if he has any response to these allegations at all. And Flint says he regrets coming in hope of any reconciliation and thinking a bridge could be built between them. Again, yeah, he's realised it was never going to happen now, I think. Seeing the sort of man that Ash really is. He says everyone is a monster to someone. Since you are so convinced I am yours, I will be it. That is a cold bar from Flint and quote of the episode for me. One of my favourite Flint lines, actually. It might be one of my favourite Flint quotes. Of the simpler kind of one-liners anyway. There's some murmuring and a handcuffed Vane is brought into the square. I love Flint's confusion on seeing him. He's just like, what the fuck? The hype, on first watching this, out of any kind of scene or whole, sequence I'd love to watch again for the first time, I think it's definitely this one. Yeah, I don't think my heart could handle the Anne fight scene from season 4 again. Yeah, he says he's come to offer testimony in defence of Flint. He's brought Abigail's diary from on board, as Billy suggested. But of course, as it's all rigged, as we see in the next scene, it ultimately doesn't mean anything. But they knew that going in. That's why he's got a plan B or plan A. Yeah, absolutely badass scenes incoming. Yeah, despite the peril they're in, a really funny kind of little moment between Flint and Vane here in this scene. Yeah, they're tied up next to each other. Flint says, what the fuck are you doing? Sort of thing. Vane says, I figured if anyone was going to make a trophy of you, it may as well be me. Yeah, so Flint asks him, so what's the plan then? You've got everyone watching us, so what's going on elsewhere? And we cut to some of Vane's men attacking the town's fort. Vane is just waiting for the signal, and Flint says calmly, when it happens, don't get in my way. And Vane, pretty much says we have to leg it to the jetty, we can't dilly-dally. Flint, who's talking a bit like Vane here, says they're all trying to convince themselves that they have nothing to be afraid of. How is running going to change that? And Vane asks him, what he suggests. And he says that we remind them that they were right to be afraid. And I love the way that Vane looks at him. Like, fuck yeah. This is such a badass episode for them both. But, especially Vane. Really badass Vane episode. I think if anyone wasn't keen on him before this episode, if there are any people that were, I can't see how anyone could still dislike him, after this episode. Such a level up, into season 3. So yeah, Vane stands just in the middle of this judge's speech while he's waffling away, pisses him off so much, and he talks to the jury and all the witnesses and civilians, who are just there getting their entertainment. Fuck about and find out is what he's saying, basically. He says, for those of you who live to see tomorrow, know that you had a choice to see the truth and you let yourselves be convinced otherwise. And he just puts his hand up in signal and just cannon fire explodes on Charlestown. Absolute chaos ensues. I make reference to how I first reacted to some things in my reaction series, during this. But otherwise, I've sort of mostly kept them separate. Mostly because after I've recorded and edited and committed to the upload, I never usually watch my shit again. I've got it out my system, so now it's just kind of cringe town a little bit for me. But my reaction to this moment just makes me chuckle still.
From the dais.
Is there a sniper? Oh! God, son! Oh shit, I've lost my headphones. Go on! Whoa! I was proper hyped that I lost my headphones. Amazing action scenes. Flint is relentless as promised and, makes a beeline straight for Peter Ash. He runs him right through in front of Miranda's corpse. He makes him look at her. And he says her word will be the last word for this place. It's deliberate, the fact that he's made it a slow death and not killed him then and there. So Ash just has to watch on and see everything he's built with his blood money fall around him. I love when a building, a big tower literally collapses like right kind of behind him. So well done. Really powerful scenes. Rotting piss, Peter Ash. So yeah, great action scenes of Vane and Flint kind of fighting together, pretty still handcuffed, through the square for most of it, to reach the jetty. These are proper war scenes. No one is safe. Civilians are getting caught up in all this. But as Vane said, they had a choice. They could have been like, yeah, not for me, dear. Should we go home and feed the goats? Or something like that. Just, yeah, brilliantly shot. Edge of your seat stuff. Best action we've seen, in my opinion. Cameras sort of following them like we're kind of right next to them. I'm surprised Flint didn't kill Ash's bodyguard, Rhett, personally. But the cannon fire, it does a good enough job of it. So maybe more satisfying for him to see that. I love cheering for Flint all this scene and see him get some sort of revenge for Miranda. But it is sad and a bit bittersweet to see McGraw finally go. It has been nice, like I've said, while going through them, to have him back in these last few episodes, or to really see that kind of side of him. And obviously, he's letting the anger part of the grief stage completely take over for now, but we'll see next season those other stages really kick in. Along with Anne, like I say, Flint and Silver's character development this season is just some of the best, like in TV, for me. Just so well written. So bit of turmoil since you left, Billy says when Vane and Flint return. Vane's remaining men are now tied up, and they're ordered to be released by Flint, to a bit of kind of confusion by Billy. And Flint just says passionately, "I know what happened and I don't care. I won't hold pirates prisoner on this ship, not after what happened today." And he looks to Vane, and he tells him to keep his men in line. And just such a look of respect between them both here, on both their face, on Vane's face here. I love this vibe for these two. Flint makes the order to ready the guns, full complement, and Billy asks what's the target, and Flint just says, "Whatever's left." Cold! Absolute badass. All that was, best action segment scene for me. Kind of along with the Ann and Jack's more character-driven scene, dialogue scene. Flint watches on with emotion as Charlestown is just destroyed. It's, MVP nominations for both James Flint and Charles Vane. So last scene to discuss, and it's some time, days later now, and Silver wakes. It's half a leg less now, and they have since refitted, Flint tells him, and he informs him of Eleanor's arrest. And, Flint says one gets used to a state of affairs for such a long time. It's easy to forget they're all just transitions. Specks of dust in the air until a strong enough gust comes along and rearranges everything. That would be this episode. Again, calls back to why it's, great to call this one Avalanche. Really kind of works in that sense. Flint says the men can feel the change and need to lean on something solid, someone to reassure them. And he announces that they have voted for Silver officially as their new quartermaster. He says it's a funny thing. The more those men need you, the more you need them. And it drives us to do the most unexpected things. I love how, we've seen Silver use the word my men, and now Flint is using the word us. I don't know if they're friends yet, completely, but there is a big difference now in the way Flint has been talking to him. These last few episodes, it's very evident. He is thinking of him more as an equal now. It's not quite as good as it's going to get, but we're very close. There's respect and a bit of trust there now. Which is why I think Flint has the reaction he does to Silver telling him about the Urca next. A bit of anger and a little bit of disappointment, I think. Silver brings up the Urca, and he's not giving away all his part. He's keeping that very brief on the goings-on. But he does make it clear he's been sitting on some pretty big game-changing information. He fully kind of shifts the blame to the messenger and says the lookout told him afterwards that he lied about the gold. Silver made up his mind. He wants to be part of this crew now. But he still has this big lie hanging over his head, so he's got to kind of clear the air as safest way he can with that. I do think there's a bit more fallout to this with them a little bit early next season. I can't completely remember, but I'm pretty sure it comes up again at least. Because the implication obviously has to be that with this knowledge prior, Flint might have held off seeing Ash, meaning, Miranda would still be alive. Hence maybe why Silver looks a little bit worried in this moment. But for now, Flint isn't deepening the betrayal too much. He just wants to know in this scene who they sold it to. And of course that leads to the great scene already discussed to close out season 2. And it's also a great episode for Silver, showing loyalty and bravery, and he joins Billy, Flint and Vane with a very strong MVP nomination. So let's get that awarded and yeah, have a look at the standings and give my final quick thoughts on this season as a whole.
Last item.
Yeah, I'm not going to be making such a kerfuffle with this one, with MVP of the episode. You know, short and sweet, no coin toss needed this time. Although Billy, Silver and Flint have had some amazing badass strong moments this episode, it's Charles Vane that just sweeps it. You know, he truly saves the day. Flint's not getting out of that alive without him coming to help otherwise. And yeah, he saves the day, like I say, with style as only Vane could. You know, with badassery as only he could. So yeah, let's have a look at how the MVPs stand at this present time. So yeah, these are our guys sort of in third place, everyone on 1 point. So yeah, everyone you see sort of on, have I got an arrow? Yes, I have. Everyone you see on the left here, you know, they won't stand a chance of getting any more points, but they are, you know, they all got off the mark. I mean, technically, Miranda and Thomas could, but they won't. Spoiler alert. And obviously, yeah, Max, Silver and Eleanor are on 1 apiece as well, so they can still get more. And, you know, I'm pretty sure Silver, well, I know Silver will next season. He's really going to level up. So let's go into our guys in joint second place. Yep, they're all on 2 apiece. So, yeah, we have Billy, which I'm quite surprised on. He got 1 this season. I didn't think he'd grab 1. Jack and Anne. And, of course, Flint. And then in first place, of course, on 3, that gives us Charles Vane. So, yeah, all to kind of play for, carrying on with this, with some great new characters to come in Season 3. But, yeah, it's Charles Vane leading the pack at the moment. So, yeah, that's Season 2 done. I think I said back on the first episode of the season, although I love them all, I think that this might be my favourite season of all 4. Again, you know, I don't necessarily think it's the best, sort of, you know, in that sense. But in terms of pacing, character development, it's just so strong for me. A couple of episodes maybe bumble along a bit slower, kind of season 1 style. But we get a lot of background, you know, into a lot of these great characters. We learn where they've come from, their hardships, their histories. Some characters still keeping their cards close to their chest, and some this season, you know, lay it all out on the line and have just become, you know, different people because of it. The plot's maybe not always edge of your seat, but it's building well, with lots of amazing foreshadowing and hidden insight into past and future. The budget levels up, the action levels up. It's a 10 out of 10 season for me. But plot twists, they all are, from now on. But, yeah, that's Season 2 done, guys. That was a longer episode. Season finales always generally will be, though. I'm ready to get into Season 3. I am going to take a little bit of a break between this one and next one. I'm kind of, yeah, not really committing to anything schedule-wise. They kind of come when they come. And then, yeah, we can really get into Season 3, and we got some new great characters to come. And, yeah, just a level up, just technically and just story-wise on everything. So, I'm really excited to, you know, get into Season 3 soon. So, yeah, as always, thank you for those that watch. Stick a like, you know, join in discussion and all that sort of stuff. I do enjoy sort of all this stuff. So, yeah, I will catch you guys very soon. And peace. Take care. Bye.